Hi everybody, I'm Josh. I don't like formal titles, so Josh is fine. I'm really glad to see the number of people who stuck around to get a lecture from a cop. Everybody loves those. I only have 18 minutes though, so buckle up because I got a lot of things to tell you what you're doing wrong. I never dreamed that I'd be a police officer. Actually, as a kid, I don't even remember playing cops and robbers. When I was going to Queens here, I really wanted to be a lawyer. But ultimately, I figured out I probably didn't have the grades, and I really wanted to have a soul. So naturally, I became a police officer. Now, lucky for me, police agencies don't hire based on knowledge of policing. They hire for skills and character traits. They need people who want to help. And I wanted to help. I just wasn't sure how to do that right off the hop. You see, most of my knowledge from policing came from what I saw on TV. So, I was gonna shoot guns, drive cars fast, and get a whole lot of girls. It didn't happen. And I'd fit the helping in there somewhere too. Early on, I did a lot of crazy things in the job, and because I get asked every single time, no, I have not shot anybody. I have had my gun out, even had to do that on the second day of the job. Did a lot of fun stuff. Saw a lot of really bad things. But for me, it was all part of a process. And that process was to become a badass drug cop. Everything was going great until one day, one of my many bosses at Kingston Police came to me and said, "We created this new job. It's a youth officer. We really want you to do it." This is what they got out of me. I took half an inch off my hairline that day. As you people can see, I really don't have a lot to work with here. I never thought that would be a good job for me. I mean, how could it be? I don't even know why they chose me. They said they needed the job to be about building relationships. Not exactly great at relationships, and you can ask my wife about that. It's even tougher to build relationships with total strangers. Now picture yourself being a police officer and you walk into a store or a restaurant to get something to eat, and almost every time somebody says the joke, "I didn't do it." It's like a bad dad joke, right? We get those all the time. And I get that it's just a joke to these people, but it's really difficult to build relationships when this is the first thing that people think of you. Before I ultimately decided to take the job, I went to a youth serving agency in town here, and they told me that the driving force of their work was relationships above all else. They told me that if I was going to be successful, I had to do the same thing. That relationship thing again. But you know what it was that ultimately made me decide to take the job? I remembered back to my time working in patrol, and you'd go to a call, and there'd be a kid there, and you'd see the way they're living and what they're being taught, and the bad examples being set for them. And there's not a lot they could do because they're just a kid. So you'd leave, go with your partner to do some notes, and one of you would always end up saying, "That kid doesn't stand a chance." It was that statement right there that made me take this job. Now, I knew when I took the job that I'd face some issues, one of them being that people have pretty much the same typical view of the police. That all we do is arrest people, or give tickets, or ruin homecoming. See, to most of you, we're just the party police. But to others, we're much worse. I'll illustrate this through a story. I run something called the Youth Police Academy out of the Boys and Girls Club. And it's a week-long camp for teens. And we teach them about policing, different aspects of it, and we play sports and games, and it's just a ton of fun. So one of the first times that I run it, I had this young lad show up. Let's call him Jake. So Jake's there with his mom, and I can see he's over in the corner. He doesn't really want to come over to me and being very standoffish. So I decide, well, I'm going to go talk to Jake. And as soon as I do, he breaks down in tears. Jake was absolutely terrified of me. And it killed me to see that look on Jake's face. And I thought to myself, how is it that we got to this point, where this is what someone thinks of me? I wanted to be seen as the fun guy, the youth cop, not some crazy drill sergeant running a boot camp. Well, part of the problem is we as police officers sometimes reinforce these negative ideas. We focus on arrests and charges as measures of success. I've been told by officers that I wasn't necessarily doing police work because I wasn't putting people in the pipes. It's cop lingo, by the way, for arresting people. Sometimes we as police officers have a difficult time being human while we do the job. Now, this one is particularly difficult for me, given my steely, RoboCop-like physique. I've even had friends ask me, when are you going to be a real cop again? I think we've all had some false assumptions about what the police do. For those of you outside the policing world, it could be based on the TV cop, that high-profile incident in the news, or you could have had an interaction with an officer who just did a crappy job that day. Part of the problem is the majority of people don't get to see inside the world of policing. And frankly, we as officers don't let them. Lack of understanding. That was a major problem. This job had to be about connecting with youth, like the way I'm dressed today. I dress like this most days because it's a lot better received than the uniform. And blue polyester does nothing for my figure. When I run the Youth Police Academy, I start out in uniform and I quickly change into clothes like these. And when I do, I can literally see the mood of the room change. And I think it's because the young people begin to see me as a person. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the uniform. It is great in most situations. But I think it's difficult for people to see the person beneath it. If I were to ask you to picture a police officer in your mind right now, I'm guessing the cruiser or the uniform or something like that would be what really stands out for you. Not so much the officer's face. I'm also guessing you're going to picture a patrol officer or a SWAT officer because that's the image we see most often. You're not picturing someone like me dressed like this. I had to show the youth that there was more to policing. If I was going to be successful, I had to give them access to my world and let them make up their own mind about it. If I was going to help that kid, the one who doesn't stand a chance, I had to get over some of my own issues first. And I had to challenge my own belief of what it is to be a police officer. See, I'd become accustomed to a certain way of policing, the glamorous part of policing. But I really had to change gears with the youth job because there was going to be no movie policing in this role. Nobody's paying to see a cop movie about some guy helping a bunch of kids. The only ones paying to hear a story like that are you people, and I thank you for it. See, policing has a culture, and part of the problem for me was I totally bought into that culture. Policing is like high school, but everyone wears guns. It's cliquey. There's a hierarchy. There's this appeal to do all the popular things. We even have our own stereotypes about each other. These are great. So, we've got the cool kids. That's the drug officers or the canine officers. We have nerds in the math club. Totally the traffic guys. We even have the starting lineup of the football team, the SWAT guys, in great shape, cool uniforms. Then you've got the community officers, the dorky, hug-first hippies. You should see the reaction that I've gotten from other officers when I tell them what it is I do. It is literally this. Oh, you're that guy. Yeah. To be honest, I had some of those same beliefs myself before becoming the youth officer. I fell into that trap of the adrenaline junkie cop being the ultimate experience in policing. But I ask you, is that what the community wants? If I were to ask the community what they wanted in an officer, it wouldn't be someone who arrests a lot of people. Caring, trustworthy, dedicated, that's what the community wants. The ultimate ask out of a police service is for a safer community. There are a lot of ways that we can do this and a lot of roles that officers have to fill. And yes, arresting people is one of those ways. But so is doing radar traffic enforcement. By the way, the nerds in the math club love to call that shooting some beam. Super cool, right? Yeah. I know for me, to create a safer community, we have to embrace our youth. We have to build relationships with them, and we have to help them when they make a bad choice. Because you know what? Those kids are going to grow up. And if we don't deal with some of their problems now, we're going to be dealing with them later. And they're probably going to get worse. So, I totally committed to this new relationship building role. And then it was time for me to go beyond brief encounters and really connect with youth. See, frontline policing has become a lot about getting to the next call and improving response times. We only have these brief encounters with the public. Our task has become more about information gathering than understanding. And I saw this a lot with our youth stats. We were charging a lot of kids in Kingston. And if we weren't charging them, we were giving out a ton of verbal warnings. I was finding youth that had 3, 4, 5 verbal warnings for committing different crimes. There's no learning going on there. And we don't understand a single thing about these young people going forward or why this keeps happening. I really had to fight the traditional police urge to have better stats. We love our stats. I love my stats. My stats get me invited to speak at fancy events. I had to move away from focusing on stats to looking at stories. When it came to matters of youth crime, I had to stop focusing on the event and focus on the person. I invested a lot of time in understanding these young people. I even implemented an assessment tool to do this. And I did so I could learn more about them, but so I could also plan for younger kids. We're the only service I know of doing this early assessment work. I learned so much in that role. I learned the kids who seemed to have it all really didn't. And I always found something surprising. Like this one file I worked, it was for a young girl, and it was for shoplifting. So as I'm working the file, I come to find out she is a super high achiever, like so many of you in this room. And she was trying to get into a really competitive university program. And she told me that the reason she stole that day was to blow off some steam, to escape from the stress of her life. She also told me that when she was arrested and went home that night, she downed a bottle of pills, tried to kill herself. See, if I hadn't invested the time in learning about these youth, I would have never heard her story, and I would have never been able to get her help. I really tore down a lot of my own personal barriers through learning and understanding. And it was time for me to give youth that same opportunity. I had to give them the opportunity to understand me and what I was trying to do. Now, if you want somebody to understand you, you have to give them the opportunity to do so. And I had a ton of people who really helped me out with this, and there was never a shortage of youth. My buddy Steve helped me out with a lot of these things, and every time I'd meet with a new group of youth, Steve would come back to me and said he got the same follow-up comments from the kids. So, Josh is a cop, right? But he's a real person. He makes jokes and stuff. See, that's the opening that I'm looking for. All I could ever ask of a young person, or anyone for that matter, is the chance to be understood. Chance to understand me and what I was trying to do. So we created a lot of opportunities to get directly involved with youth, but a lot of police services all across the country are doing this as well. I even borrowed some of these ideas. Police Athletics League. Thank you very much, Ottawa Police. Made me look like a genius on that one. Well, that's okay, because a lot of people are borrowing my ideas now. We got into social media, directly targeted youth. I had a lot of epic fails on this front, including a quickly deleted video of me holding hands with someone skipping down the waterfront in Kingston. That really solidified I was not one of the cool kids at the station. But that's okay, because I wanted to show the youth the human side of policing. And not once did I ever try and tell them how great the cops are. I actually probably pointed out my flaws more often than anything, and they really appreciated that. And you know what happened? The youth began to understand. Understand that we're not robots. Understand that we're not like that glamorous role on TV. Understand that we do more than arrest people. That same youth agency I talked about earlier said to me, the thing I did best these past 3 years was to lift the veil on policing. That tells me I took the right path. I think with a little more understanding from all of us, we could have a safer community. I'm really encouraged by the amount of understanding I've seen the past 3 years, both from myself and from the youth. I invested in understanding, and so did they. And I've seen the results of that investment. Remember Jake, the one who was terrified of me earlier? I saw him again. I was dealing with a file for another young lad in the north end of Kingston, and so Jake wanted to sit in on my consultation. And Jake remembered me, and I thought that was awesome that this kid remembered me and said hi and the whole deal. So we sat in, and I could tell the new kid's really pushing back. He doesn't want to be part of the process. He doesn't want to participate, nothing. And in the middle of it all, Jake stops him and says, "Hey, this is Josh. All he's trying to do is help you." See what Jake did right there? That's success. He invested in understanding me. My hope is you make that same investment in understanding as well. Thank you.